Cubism is different from Fauvism in all of the following except all of the following aspects except. Option A says conceptual outlook. This we can find is an aspect of difference between Cubism and Fauvism. Now, the aspect of the difference is mentioned in the last paragraph, the fourth paragraph. It is stated here, it is because of this that Cubism is said to be conceptual and intellectual, in contrast to the phenomenalistic and sensualistic tendencies of its predecessor, Fauvism. So we see in a simplification that Cubism was conceptual and intellectual rather than phenomenalistic and sensualistic, which were tendencies of Fauvism. So it is according to these aspects or on these points that Cubism was different from Fauvism. So conceptual outlook very well coincides with one of these differences. So one is an aspect on which Cubism and Fauvism were different. So A is not a valid answer. Option B says intellectual manifestation. Again, conceptual and intellectual. So intellectual manifestation was an aspect of difference between the two. B is also incorrect. Option C tells us the laws of perspective and shading. This is a reference to the last statement, the last line rather, of the third paragraph, but this is actually a valid answer. We'll see. From 1909 to 1910, both Picasso and Braque advanced even further in dismantling the object through Cubism, which tried to depict the reality of an object without using the traditional laws of perspective or shading. That said, we see that laws of perspective or shading, perspective and shading, are mentioned here. They are where Cubism is different, but it is different only from the traditional art forms, the traditional methods of using the laws of perspective and shading. This has not been directly mentioned as a point of difference between Cubism and Fauvism. Yes, it follows a line where, or it precedes a paragraph where such difference has been mentioned, but there's no direct mention of that difference here. So we cannot say that this is where Cubism is different from Fauvism. Different from traditional art forms, traditional forms of art or traditional rules of art, absolutely. But different from Fauvism, we are not sure. This may or may not be a difference between the two. So C is a valid choice. Option D says the influence of Negro sculpture. This might be a little confusing, but we have actually we have already established this point in a previous question. We see it here that while Fauvists were interested in Negro sculpture and even collected it, Picasso's interest in Negro sculpture was different from the others. Picasso used Negro sculpture as an influence on his work, which later came to be characterized as Cubism. That is the essence of the second paragraph. Notice the key phrase here, Picasso's interest was different from the others. So Fauvism, while Fauvists were interested in Negro sculpture, Fauvism did not have an influence of Negro sculpture on it. So this is also a point where Cubism is different from Fauvism. So D is also not a valid answer. We can eliminate it. The correct answer is option C.